Synesso itself isn't well known in home espresso circles, but since their inception in 2004, they've found themselves on cafe bars all over the world. And Mark Barnett, the brains behind the business upon leaving La Marzocco, set his sights on producing stable, reliable commercial machines beyond the traditional options. And yes, that is a direct quote from their website, and if that isn't some coffee shade, I don't know what is. But now, as they're about to enter into their 20th year in business, they've finally decided to step out from behind the cafe bar and onto the kitchen counter with this, the ES1, aimed at bridging the somewhat difficult but always narrowing gap of commercial capabilities and home comforts, all while utilizing their espresso machine engineering prowess to bring something new to a rapidly expanding market. So in today's video, I'll be digging into the Synesso ES1, talking about its notable features, performance, usability, and you guessed it, its downsides. Of course, as always in the spirit of full disclosure, the folks at Synesso loaned me the ES1 for this review, and of course agreed to my terms of no access to my draft or the contents of this video prior to full public release. But with that out of the way, we're going to dive right into it after a quick word from this video's sponsor, Third Wave Water. When it comes to brewing the best coffee, the importance of water cannot be understated. I mean, purely by the numbers, it makes up to 98% of what's in your cup, and it's vital to the long-term reliability of your equipment. That's why after 8 long months of testing and trials, I found myself running my entire coffee program on Third Wave Water. Not only is it designed to not produce scale or cause corrosion in your equipment, but there's an option for every palate. Third Wave Water offers a wide variety of mineral blends specifically designed to get the most out of your favorite roast level or brew type. So take control of one of the most important variables for brewing quality coffee and head over to thirdwavewater.com/Sprometheus or use code Sprometheus at checkout to snag 10% off your first purchase. Thanks to Third Wave Water for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back into it. Beyond the sheer industrial minimalism on its surface, the ES1 is a uniquely engineered machine. But to start front and center, let's get the elephant in the room out of the way. Yes, it looks similar to the Decent, and I'd say beyond that and brewing espresso, that's where the comparisons end. But I digress. As you'd expect, the touchscreen is where 97% of the machine is controlled. On the homepage, you have some basic info like the current set temp, a handful of common actions like your T-tap settings, the surprisingly useful cleaning screen lock, and the auto backflush. But most importantly, your shot options, which are programmed in manual. Under the Program tab, you've got a few factory-loaded options, as well as the ability to create a lot more with a handful of adjustable parameters, but I'll get more into how that's all used in the next section. Under the manual shot, you're locked into essentially a manual shot progression, meaning as you tap the paddle to the left, it changes the shot stage, which is broken down into 3 points: pre-infusion, infusion, and ramp down. Manual shots can also be saved and reran as a program shot, and all the shots can be viewed after the fact as a graph that shows the flow rate, pressure, and timeline. And finally, when you tap the paddle to the right, it engages a quick auto purge. But beyond the screen and the paddle, the only other controls on the machine itself is the button for the T-tap and the lever for the steam wand. Of course, like the commercial Synessos, the ES1 uses a rotary pump to produce consistent and reliable pressure. Also, the ES1 is technically a dual boiler machine, and as you can see, there are 2 stainless steel tanks inside, a larger 3¼ liter steam and a half-liter low temp tank. So using a heat exchanger, a hydraulic system, proportional valves, and an algorithm, water from both of these boilers are blended to create the set temp, which is engineered to allow for a broad range of temperatures on short notice. But there is a bit of a caveat there, which we'll get to in a bit. But considering how important all the tech is inside this machine, they very smartly separated the brewing and electrical components behind a bulkhead. And when it comes to water sources, the ES1 can be fully plumbed in, but also has a fully enclosed 3-liter water tank that can be accessed from the subtly placed top fill hatch next to the screen. And finally, the water finishes its journey out of the machine from an actively heated group head. Now that we've had a quick look at the hardware and software that comes together to create the ES1, let's get into how this all functions from the end user perspective. As I mentioned, the home screen options are pretty straightforward, so let's dive directly into program shots. So when you hit the program button, it brings up a list of presets, and when you choose a program shot, you can go directly into brewing by tapping the paddle to the left, or you can hit the edit button and change any of the saved settings. And this starts with brew temperature, which gives you a range from 190 to 208, which I think could still use about 5 degrees on the lower end for darker roasts, but that could just be me. You can also set the output or yield, but just like the Sanremo U, this is measured by a flow meter between the pump and the group, meaning what you end up with in the cup will be quite a bit less. Pre-infusion itself can be adjusted from 0.1 to 99 seconds, and ramp down timing can be set from 0 to 100% of the shot. And when it comes to adjusting any of the pressures from pre-infusion to ramp down, it can be set from 3.5 to 9.5 bars. So all of these options give you a relatively wide range of control to explore your espresso accurately and easily within a relatively small window of a few grams or seconds shot to shot. But when it comes to manual shots, things are a bit more straightforward. As soon as you hit the manual button, it takes you to a page where you basically have two options: adjust the temperature or start the shot. The first tap of the paddle begins the pre-infusion. The second, infusion, and the last, ramp down. You can adjust the pressure stages for manual shots in the advanced settings menu, and much like the program shots, they can be set from 3.5 to 9.5 bars. So overall, regardless of the shot method you choose, whether that be manual or programmed, the performance is very similar across the board and all fall within the capabilities of the platform. The water flow from the group screen is even. The pressure, at least from what I can see on the digital gauges, is quickly applied and stable. And when brewing, the temperature is consistent. So, as expected, all of this produces high quality, well extracted, and full flavored shots. But with that said, I did expect faster brew temp swings considering the blending program inside the machine. But from 200 degrees to 190, it took a total of 5 minutes to drop, and another minute to come back up. So the broad temperature range mentioned earlier is essentially from group to T-tap and not from shot to shot. And when it comes to the T-tap itself and its temperature and volume settings, I do think it's a cool thing to have, but I don't see T being a major selling point for an espresso machine. Last, but certainly not least, let's talk about steam. Now, from a usability perspective, I really love these oversized, highly adjustable wands, as they make steaming more comfortable and less confined. And the use of a lever for the steam control is also peak perfection for me. I love the ability to taper or use lower pressures for smaller amounts of milk. The power behind the wand itself is also great. The large steam boiler provides as much or as little as you need to get that perfect silky milky. Having now spent a good amount of time with the ES1 both in testing and as a daily driver, there are definitely some things that strike me as possible issues for those considering putting one on their counter. For example, many modern dual boiler espresso machines allow you to turn off the steam boiler if you want just espresso, which reduces warm-up time and the power being used. But the ES1, due to its need to draw and blend water from both tanks, it doesn't really have that ability, so you're more or less stuck having to wait the full 20+ minute warm-up time. Now, I've said this before, and I know that I give Marzocco a ration of shit about the use of their Casio watch screens on their machines, but I also can't help but be a little concerned about the use of a touchscreen. For one, there's just a very heavy reliance on it for the machine to work, and it seems like if something were to go wrong, even just a blank screen, you've basically got yourself a very expensive paperweight. On top of that, the touchscreen also appears to be built in and bolted down, which I'm sure complicates the replacements or upgrades down the line, considering touchscreens end up obsolete in what feels like a matter of minutes. Also, in terms of being a machine with a paddle, there is quite a bit less control than you'd expect, as it operates purely as a switch, and there's no on-the-fly adjustments outside of changing brew stages. And finally, I think it must be said that my experience with the ES1 did have a bit of a rocky start. When it arrived, the sensor in the water tank was unplugged, leaving a full machine reading no water, and once that was resolved, it began a constant hiss. Now, each of these issues were resolved relatively quickly on the phone with Synesso and a short tech visit, but all in all, it did cost me a couple of days. Now, regular viewers probably already know this, but I'm not in the market of running interference for manufacturers, and being transparent about my full experience with equipment is something that I really hold dear, and I owe it to my viewers. And really, in the end, it's up to all of you to decide whether this is serious or not. But for me, considering the third-party tech's opinion that this was shipping related and the fact that this is machine number 12, I think it's fair to give them a little wiggle room to work these things out. So as I sat down to collect my thoughts about the ES1 and my time with it, I do have to say it feels like it was a bit of a roller coaster. Of course, there was a lot of excitement having it here after waiting so long, and even with the issues it had, I've definitely enjoyed brewing on it and exploring its capabilities. And I think it is a solid home or light commercial machine, but considering the $9,000 price tag, at this point, the way it stands, it still feels a little simple, a little basic. I mean, don't get me wrong, the materials, parts, and overall engineering are of a high commercial quality. But from an average consumer perspective, at least in terms of what I consider its main features, which is programmable shots and adjustable pressures, it doesn't really stand out above the other options on the market right now. But from what I understand from speaking to the folks at Synesso, the machine is designed to be an evolving platform based on user feedback, with Wi-Fi and other potential tweaks and updates on the horizon. So deciding if it's worth $9,000 as it sits right now may be an exercise in faith. But most high-end prosumer home espresso machines aren't really purchases based in reason anyway. Ask me how I know. And on that note, I think it's time I start wrapping this one up, and as always, pass the conversation on to you. What are your thoughts on the ES1? And what are your thoughts on its price tag? That seemed to be a hot topic of conversation in the comment section of the unboxing. Do you think it's alienating or aspirational? And also, what are your thoughts on the current trend of machines being built with untapped potential already inside of them, ready to be unlocked at a future date? Drop your answers to those questions and any others you may have in the comment section down below. And as always, I'll see y'all next week. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit that little bell button for notifications of new videos posted every Friday. Check out my Instagram at Sprometheus for content throughout the week. Help support the channel by considering becoming a member for exclusive access. And as always, stay caffeinated. Pony Boy.